How's it going, guys? Today I'm gonna be showing you my top 10 facts about A Plague Tale Innocence. Let's do this. So up to number 10 is that it might be obvious for everyone that the inspiration for this game is The Last of Us, the most critically acclaimed project by Naughty Dog, and that is certainly not false. However, according to the developers from Asobo Studio, the major influence for this game was a game called Ico, developed by Team Ico in Japan Studio. And that makes a lot of sense because Amicia and Hugo are children, and they both hold hands for the entire game, just like Aiko and Yoda. While Amicia does play the role of a protector and Hugo is the companion, they did not remind me of Joel and Ellie in any way, shape or form. Up to number 9 is that the flesh-eating rats were based on the Black Plague, a contagious disease that took place in the 14th century in real life. And no, that's not to say there used to be a herd of rats who devoured people like zombies centuries ago. But these animals were still involved in causing the death of 25 million individuals between 1346 and 1353. The rats carried a bacteria called Yersinia pestis, and their blood was absorbed by fleas which would then end up in any human they encountered. Sweet lord. Before ending up with this concept, Asobo considered an idea of using a fog as a major infection obstacle for our main characters. However, that concept was immediately scrapped, and they didn't go any further in detail of how it was going to work out. Was it going to be like the fog from Stephen King's The Mist or the one from Silent Hill? Who knows? Up to number 8 is that A Plague Tale Innocence was made with the intention of telling a compelling story under the influence of The Last of Us and have it take place in Middle Ages, because that type of setting wasn't really used much for linear story driven games. However, they didn't intend to make the story and lore completely accurate to our real life history, because they wanted to create their own fictional story in that type of period. They were aiming to strike a balance between a fact and a fiction in order to keep the players engaged. So yeah, Amicia and Hugo are not based on any real life individuals from the 14th century, and human meat eating rats did not exist. Up to number 7 is that the title of this game is A Plague Tale Innocence. What's interesting about it is that the major title, A Plague Tale, is based on a sentence of 3 words being a fairy tale. And of course, they removed and replaced the fairy word with plague because this is not a happy story. Also, the word innocence is referring to Hugo, because he was born as an innocent child who just happened to be chosen as a deadly burden for a lot of people. I know there isn't much else to say about the title of the game, but I thought it was interesting enough to be put in the list. Up to number 6 is that even though the game looks very AAA from a certain point of view, this is actually a AA game. A AA game is a type of project that will be made with less than $1 million, and guess what? The number of people involved in the development of A Plague Tale Innocence was 40 in total. This game is like a mix between being an indie game and a AAA game at the same time, and that's what I love about it. In my opinion, this genre of video games deserves just as much attention as the indie and AAA industry, because I've been playing a lot of gems of this type. Up to number 5 is that before hiring the cast for the characters of this game, Asobo used text-to-speech voices for the characters with the purpose of testing different builds of the game. They also used family members and friends to do the voices before hiring any voice actors. The best example that I could find is the 2017 teaser trailer for A Plague Tale Innocence. If you listen to the dialogue in this teaser, you can hear Amicia and Hugo talking with each other.
I don't like this.
What's that noise?
Because
Oh no. Amicia! Stay close to me! I think we're in that room! Sugar, no!
As you have heard, these voices did not come from Charlie McBurney and Logan Hannon, because they were not hired at that time. Up to number 4 is that this game was planned to be released on Nintendo Switch as well. However, that idea was completely scrapped because it would require the developers to remove the rat models to have the game run smoothly. If you didn't know, A Plague Tale Innocence uses 5,000 rat models per scenario for attention purposes. And if they did what they were required to do for a Switch port, then the rats would have been less scary and challenging. Therefore, the only choice they had is to release the game on the cloud platform for the Switch console. Up to number 3 is that the development team behind A Plague Tale Innocence is a fan of different pieces of media, and therefore they added different references and Easter eggs throughout this game. Here are a few examples. First, if you go behind this specific trebuchet in chapter 5, you will see the Leviathan axe, which belongs to Kratos from God of War 2018. In the same chapter, you can find a bonfire which resembles the bonfire from Dark Souls. If you examine this well at Laurentius' farmhouse, Hugo will say,
It's really dark. Maybe there's a monster in it.
which is a reference to the movie The Ring. Last but not least, in chapter 13, if you look in the office room which is near Hugo's room, you can find a spinning top on this table, which is a nod to Christopher Nolan's film Inception. Just like in that film, this object spinning forever confirms that Amicia is in a dream sequence in this particular chapter. Up to number 2 is that the ending of Innocence was completely different. What I mean by it is that the game was never originally going to have an epilogue chapter. The whole story was supposed to end with just Hugo glaring at Vitalis' corpse as he dies on the ground. And that is interesting because if they ended with chapter 16, then some players would have been left unsatisfied. It is unclear why they wanted to end the story like that, but in the end they decided to create the epilogue chapter in the very last months of development before releasing it in May 2019. This makes me wonder, if the original ending idea happened, then how different the sequel would have been. Would Melly still be left out of the story, or would she have stayed with Amicia and her family in the end? Who knows? And now for fact number 1 is that A Plague Tale Innocence received a ghost review when one of the prototype versions of the game was playtested in July 2018. If you don't know what a ghost review is, it's basically feedback that isn't meant to be shared with anyone outside of the developer and publisher. The game received a negative reception from the playtesters at that time. This reception made the development team push the game in May 2019, and the intention was to change the entire story of the game, move some certain chapters to the cutting room, and simplify the gameplay to move the story to the forefront, ensuring that the game would get a big positive reception from critics and players alike. And that makes me question, how different was the story and the gameplay in the early version of the game? Was the gameplay more complex? Did the story have more risky plot points? Only the developers have an answer to those questions. And unless they share it with us, we will never know. So yeah, thanks for watching my video. If you learned something new today and want to see more of these type of videos, please leave a like to the video and then subscribe to the channel for more top 10 video game facts. And that's it. Again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, farewell.